This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Tuesday, October 20th. This is Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, Voice of America is taking every necessary precaution to safeguard its employees. So our broadcast will look a little different today and in the near future, as we, out of an abundance of caution, reduce our staffing at VOA headquarters here in Washington. We're working to help keep you informed about what's going on, and we appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. Fartuun Adan and her daughter Ilwad Elman, Somali mother and daughter duo, are the 2020 recipients of the Aurora Prize for Awakening Humanity, a prize given each year to a person or group risking their lives to protect people in conflict. VOA's Salem reports.
Fartuun Adan and her daughter Ilwad Elman operate Elman Peace, an organization that helps victims of sexual violence and works to rehabilitate and provide job training to child soldiers in Somalia. The pair also created Sister Somalia, the first rape crisis center in the country, to offer protection, counseling, and medical treatments to victims. In 2010, when the crisis center began its work, Somali politicians, including the president, denied that rape existed in the country. It was considered a taboo subject to discuss.
The human suffering of women and girls was so tolerated, was so normalized, that it was an open secret in society.
When the group opened a hotline where victims could call for help, operators received threats of violence.
Our staff were arrested, harassed, our centers were shut down. This was just a mere 10 years ago. There was no profile of what a survivor of sexual violence looked like in Somalia then, from a 7-year-old woman to a 2-year-old child. Complete impunity.
Despite those setbacks, the crisis center has grown to include locally supported facilities in 9 regions of Somalia. The once ignored issue is now being debated in parliament by women lawmakers.
We still have so far to go, that we went from a place where you couldn't even talk about it, where there were no services available at all, to now having multiple service providers, where we have from a surge of 11% women in political participation to 24%.
In recognition of their work, they were awarded the 2020 Aurora Prize for Awakening Humanity, a $1 million prize given each year to a person or group risking their lives to protect people in conflict. The award's co-founder says the prize is a recognition of people doing great work for humanity.
Symbol of hope, action, and transcendence. Transcending boundaries, transcending religion, transcending ideologies, but dealing with the basic, most decent, honest element that human beings are one.
Elman Peace also runs the Drop the Gun, Pick Up the Pen, which was a slogan used by Fartuun Adan's late husband, Elman Ali Ahmed. He was also an activist and was killed near his home in 1996. The initiative offers counseling services and job training to young people who leave armed groups like Al-Shabaab.
When you hear Al-Shabaab, you expect the worst. But when you stay with them and see how they are playing and learning, they are just children. They need a chance for a new life.
And in agreement with the government, any child who is apprehended or surrenders may be eligible to be transferred to one of those Elman Peace centers within 72 hours. There, ex-fighters can learn skills like cell phone and auto repair.
We want to give them an alternative that is peaceful. And less fighters means less fighting.
Salem Solomon, VOA News, Washington.
U.S. President Donald Trump says the United States is set to remove Sudan from its list of state sponsors of terrorism after the country follows through on an agreement to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to U.S. terror victims and families. The president announced via Twitter on Monday, great news. New government of Sudan, which is making great progress, has agreed to pay $335 million to U.S. terror victims and families. Once deposited, I will lift Sudan from the state sponsors of terrorism list. At long last, justice for the American people and big step for Sudan. The move would allow Sudan to once again receive international loans and aid that are needed to boost the country's economy. The $335 million that Sudan is agreeing to pay to Americans is for victims of al-Qaeda attacks on U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania in 1998 and for the bombing of the USS Cole in 2000 in a Yemeni port. U.S. courts have found that Sudan was complicit in those attacks. The South African health minister has tested positive for the coronavirus. Here's Soraya Ali with the details.
South Africa's health minister, Zweli Mkhize, and his wife have tested positive for COVID-19. Mkhize was tested after showing mild symptoms, and his office confirmed the news on Sunday. They released a statement saying the pair were in quarantine and remain optimistic about making a full recovery. On Friday, the number of coronavirus cases in Africa's worst affected country surpassed 700,000, and it's escalating fears of a second wave of infections that could exacerbate an economic recession. Mkhize, the health minister and a trained doctor, has been at the forefront of South Africa's fight to contain the pandemic. He urged the country to continue to adhere to health protocols by wearing masks and maintaining social distancing, saying, quote, "Whatever we do and wherever we go, we have to keep in mind that there remains a risk of a second wave."
Reuters' Soraya Ali with that report. Dozens of European cities are being forced into lockdown amid a surge in coronavirus infections. Hospital intensive care units are filling up fast, and there are fears that health systems could become overwhelmed as winter approaches. As Henry Ridgwell reports from London, there is growing pressure for a return to the strict nationwide lockdowns that were imposed in the spring despite economic impact concerns.
The City of Light plunged into darkness. Paris, along with 8 other French cities, is under a nighttime curfew, with all restaurants, bars and shops forced to close from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. for 4 weeks.
My first reaction was that it's going to be hell.
Announcing the measures Wednesday, French President Emmanuel Macron warned of tough times ahead.
We have to deal with this virus until at least the summer of 2021. All the scientists are clear.
Spain, Madrid and 8 other cities are under a state of emergency, with strict limits on travelling outside the region. Bars and restaurants in Barcelona have been ordered to close for 15 days.
Who is going to take care of the wages for these 15 days? Who is going to take charge of the rent?
Spain has extended emergency financial support for businesses, but the economic cost across Europe is growing. The Dutch government ordered pubs and restaurants to close for 2 weeks from Wednesday evening.
This is the last night before the lockdown, the last time to party.
Some scientists say the surge in infections was driven by young people returning to schools and universities in September.
We'll end up having the burden brought back onto those who are elderly, infirm, or vulnerable. And as a result of that, we will see increase in hospitalizations in a matter of days.
Britain has imposed a 3-tiered system of lockdowns, with the city of Liverpool in the highest tier. Doctors say over 95% of intensive care beds in the city are full.
If we just carry on and carry on, it'll spread and spread and spread. It'd be like the TB from years ago, when everyone was dying years ago, when I was a young lad.
But the localised lockdowns aren't enough, say scientists.
Time will show that we will end up in a situation that lockdown at Tier 2 is going to be inadequate and Tier 3 is not going to be adequate, and we will need to get into a lockdown like the one in March. The longer we'll leave it, the longer we're going to need stronger measures to last for to contain the transmission.
The British government says it wants to avoid another national lockdown because it would hit the economy and society hard. But hospitals are filling up and the number of coronavirus deaths is increasing. Across Europe, pressure is growing for a stronger response. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News, London.
Tanzania is set to hold general elections October 28 to elect the president and National Assembly. Chama Cha Mapinduzi, the ruling party since independence in 1961, has never lost an election. The CCM party is led by incumbent President John Magufuli, who is running for his second term in office. Tundu Lissu is running for president, representing the main opposition Chadema Party. Over the next few days, we'll bring you a series called We Are Tanzanians, where we spoke to voters about their feelings and concerns ahead of the upcoming election. In this first episode, we spoke to Mwajabu Kilongola, a clerk and Dar es Salaam resident.
Naitwa Mwajabu Kilongola.
My name is Mwajabu Kilongola. I work as a clerk at Malaika Stationery located in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania.
Uchaguzi wa mwaka huu ni muhimu kwa sababu
this year's election is important because we would like to get leaders who can do what Tanzanians need. We need leaders who care about people without discriminating against them because of age. Young people also need to be leaders, and that's why I need to vote to get leaders who care.
Kiongozi ninayemtaka ni yule kiongozi.
A leader that I want is the leader who cares about his country's development and the welfare of his citizens without thinking too much about his political party's ideology. He should care about all citizens. He should be someone who can move our country forward.
Ninachokihofia katika uchaguzi wa mwaka huu kwamba kumekuwa kuna maneno.
What I'm scared of in this election is rumors that some political parties are saying that they know that the election will be rigged, and they won't allow that to happen. This can cause their members to react badly and not accept the results, and that really scares me.
Tanzania ambayo naihitaji ni ile ambayo yenye maendeleo.
The Tanzanian that I want is the Tanzanian who envisions development and cares about all of its citizens, whether rich or poor. He should be able to pursue development in urban and rural areas so all of us can at least be on one level and encourage freedom for people to do what they like to do.
Tanzania ni nchi ya amani, kwamba watu wake wana umoja.
Tanzania is a peaceful country and people have unity and solidarity. What I don't like is some people using politics to destroy that.
Tomorrow, we'll introduce Tanzanian businessman Laurent Bagari. The trading arm of Toyota is making a multi-million-dollar investment in a Ugandan startup. Edward Barron has the report.
25-year-old Ugandan driver Mark Yahweh has just put a down payment on a new motorbike from India's Hero Motorcore. He's been making a living by driving someone else's bike for the last 3 years. Ugandan company Tugende seeks out people like Yahweh to lend funds so he can operate his own bike. The trading arm of Toyota Group has invested $4 million in Tugende, saying it hopes the firm's loans to small independent businesses will also help customers buy Toyota vehicles.
I find the terms to be favourable because when I go to a private motorcycle owner, he will lend me the motorcycle to drive. Yet when I go to Tugende, they give me a motorcycle with the taxes paid.
Banks are often reluctant to lend money to small or informal businesses in Africa because of the high rate of default. With an asset base of $30 million, Tugende has handed out about 35,000 so-called bike mortgages so far. The mortgages last 2 years, but more than 3/4 of clients pay it off early, according to Michael Wilkerson, Tugende's chief executive officer.
It's very difficult for them to access credit from most standard banks, and even a lot of technology-led lenders are small loans and very expensive. So the Tugende model is all about helping people own income-generating assets.
Payments are made via cell phones and other digital platforms. The financing gap for micro, small and medium enterprises in sub-Saharan Africa is estimated at $331 billion, according to a 2017 report by the International Finance Corporation, the private investment arm of the World Bank.
Edward Barron with that report. We're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered during the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, tech companies fight against fake news in the run-up to the U.S. elections. Stay with us.
Is about more than just sitting here and talking about women's issues. It's about listening to them
and bringing their opinions to the table and making sure their voices are heard.
Because our lived experiences, our stories, and our voices will help shape the next generation.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Mudu, in Washington, every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
Welcome back to Africa 54. In today's explainer about the U.S. presidential election, it's the U.S. Republican Party.
Hello, everyone. Only a few more days before the general election in the United States. Who will be the 46th president of the nation? Former Vice President Joe Biden or the incumbent Donald Trump? The first defends the colors of the Democratic Party. The second stands under the banner of the Republican Party. In this video, we take a look at the history of Donald Trump's party and many before him. George W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, going back to the first president representing the Red Party, Abraham Lincoln. Here's what you need to know.
The Republican Party is known for favoring a smaller federal government as well as conservative social policies. However, this was not always the case. The party was founded in 1854 by Northerners who wanted a stronger federal government and who opposed the expansion of slavery in western states. The party's second ever candidate for president, Abraham Lincoln, wins the presidency in 1860 and goes on to preserve the Union and abolish slavery. Following the North's win of the Civil War, the Republican Party dominates the nation's politics for the next 70 years. During this time, the party champions an expansion of federal power. Party leaders also back the 15th Amendment, guaranteeing the vote for African American men. The party's dominance comes crashing down with the Great Depression. Democrats blame the economic collapse on Republican pro-business policies. Over the next 50 years, Democrats mostly control national politics, with only one Republican president gaining power. Republicans develop a conservative response to the Democrats' expansion of the federal government that started during the Great Depression. The changing policies of the parties leads to a demographic switch, with many African Americans moving to the Democratic Party and many Southern whites switching to the Republican Party. In the 1980s, President Ronald Reagan wins over a large majority of the country with his policies. In recent decades, Democrats and Republicans trade control over the presidency. Recent Republican presidents George W. Bush and Donald Trump champion an even smaller role for the federal government and move further right on social policies.
On Wednesday's show, we'll help explain why some U.S. states are called red and some are called blue. Public opinion polls indicate slightly more older Americans are supporting Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden than President Donald Trump. VOA's Patsy Widakuswara reports.
This senior community in Florida is traditionally a Republican stronghold, but after the Democratic National Convention in August, some residents paraded in support of Joe Biden, saying they have had enough of President Donald Trump.
We want everybody to know that we need to get him out of office.
Polls show Trump is losing support from voters 65 and older, a group he won by 9 percentage points in 2016.
He is losing seniors in many states, often by very substantial margins. That's a result of downplaying the coronavirus pandemic while seniors are the most vulnerable population.
Eager to win back older voters who make up 23% of the 2020 American electorate, on Friday, Trump campaigned in Florida in an event billed protecting American seniors.
I will defend you and I will fight for you with every ounce of energy and conviction that I have.
Trump repeated a promise he made days after his release from hospital due to COVID, saying seniors will get the same experimental drugs that he received.
We're going to make it available to everyone who needs it for free.
While the pandemic is a factor in polling, senior support for Trump has slipped since mid-2019. One possible reason, retirees now see him as a more extreme candidate than they did 4 years ago.
More moderate candidates tend to win higher shares of the vote. So this is true of all voters in the first place. Among seniors, this is also a more moderate portion of the electorate.
Biden also traveled to a senior center in Florida this week to court older Americans.
Because Donald Trump, it's simple. Not a joke. You're expendable. You're forgettable. You're virtually nobody. That's how he sees seniors. That's how he sees you.
Trump recently tweeted a Photoshop meme of his opponent in a wheelchair surrounded by seniors. The 74-year-old president often mocks Biden, who is 77, calling him Sleepy Joe.
Trump has doubled down on the idea that Joe Biden isn't functioning well anymore, simply that he is too old, implying with no evidence that he has dementia. And of course, this doesn't play very well with a senior audience.
Who's better, seniors? Still, the Trump campaign is not giving up on seniors, launching ads targeting older voters in key battleground states this week. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News.
The spread of misinformation makes the search for trustworthy news that much harder. But as Tina Twin reports, tech companies are identifying media bias and helping readers discern the real news from the fake.
Between Google, Facebook, Twitter, and other ways Americans get their news online, many may be experiencing information overload in the run-up to Election Day. And some information isn't necessarily accurate or even true.
8 in 10 Americans are now concerned that misinformation will play a role in the outcome of the election.
But would most Americans be able to spot misinformation if they saw it?
We are expecting the news consumer to actually do the work and recognize, is this news true? Is this biased? Is it not?
That's why Harleen Kaur and her co-founders started Ground News, which claims to be the world's first news comparison platform.
So say it's a political story about elections, we'll show you how all the way from far left to far right are covering it so you can compare.
Ground News' browser extension provides this immediately for stories.
With a single click, you can then figure out what else is available. What are the other spins on the same story?
We are all biased. We're biased by everything we know, by our life experience, and everything we don't know.
John Gable is the co-founder of AllSides.com, a site that provides media bias ratings and identifies left, center, and right takes on the headlines.
We automatically bring out different points of view. So our first 3 results of any search you do on a news story will give you 3 different perspectives on that same topic.
User experience researchers like Samir Patil have found that any additional guidance can help reduce the spread of misinformation.
And this doesn't have to be very lengthy or extensive, just a short blurb that says this might be questionable or you might want to look further into it. Just that brief intervention acts as a check and reduces people's tendency or intention to share it.
Ultimately, a healthy dose of skepticism is needed.
Just at least think about, is this likely to be true? Are there factors that may make it not true? Just that brief pause and reflecting might be useful here.
This election season and beyond, it's one way to separate the real news from the fake news. Tina Trin, VOA News, New York.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thank you for watching.
People, now you ready to ride? I do.